First, an American takeover of Gaza, a Riviera of the Middle East, and Palestinians forced to resettle in other countries. President Donald Trump's extraordinary suggestions have been roundly condemned by international allies today, including France, the United Kingdom, and Saudi Arabia. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees has called his words extremely surprising. Well, Trump made those comments in Washington, speaking alongside the Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu. Here's a look at what unfolded.
The Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad, this could be so magnificent.
It was an announcement evocative of the president's real estate roots. Speaking at a press conference alongside the Israeli Prime Minister, Donald Trump said the United States would take over the Gaza Strip and redevelop it.
We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area.
Trump repeatedly said that Palestinians living in Gaza had been unlucky and that they should not be the ones to rebuild the territory. Instead, the president said the population of roughly 2 million should be housed by countries with, quote, humanitarian hearts while Gaza is being cleared. Egypt, Jordan and other US allies in the Middle East say that relocating Palestinians from Gaza would threaten regional stability and undermine the push for a two-state solution. International law prohibits forced displacement. After its redevelopment, Trump said Gaza could be home to, quote, the world's people, including Palestinians. The president did not answer a question on how and under what authority the US could take over and occupy Gaza, and he didn't rule out sending American troops to support the reconstruction. Washington taking a direct stake in Gaza would counter decades of US policy towards the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Trump said everyone he had spoken to about the proposal loved the idea. However, it's already attracting criticism, including from Washington's allies. Saudi Arabia issued a firm statement saying the Palestinian people remain committed to their land and will not budge from it. Benjamin Netanyahu, meanwhile, praised Trump for thinking outside the box.
Well, no surprise that Palestinians in Gaza have reacted with shock and anger at Trump's idea. Here's a sense of the mood in Gaza City this morning.
I am Gazan. My father and grandfather were from here. We are true Gazans, so they can do whatever they want to do, and we shall remain steadfast in our homeland. We will not leave. We've got one option only, live or die here.
We've been fighting displacement since 1948, so we refuse this because we've been fighting this for over 76 years. You can say we are approaching 100 years of conflict. We reject displacement and expulsion from our land. This is our land.
We shall not leave no matter what. My house was destroyed. I can't sleep on the rubble. We shall not leave even if they deprive us. We will remain steadfast on our land, the land of our grandparents.
Well, I'm pleased to welcome to the programme now Dalal Iriqat. She joins us live from the Palestinian city of Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. She is an associate professor of diplomacy and of conflict resolution at the Arab American University there. Good afternoon to you and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Look, first of all, as a Palestinian, as an academic, tell us your first reaction when you heard that Donald Trump says he wants the United States to take over Gaza and turn it into a Riviera of the Middle East.
Well, to start with, he's back to his imposing facts on our grounds. Yet, I want to adopt a pragmatic approach and respond to his announcements today through Frans van Katgenau. From an academic perspective, I would like to analyze what we just heard from two dimensions, from two angles. First of all, the very visionary, yes, out-of-the-box, creative statements about having the Riviera of the Middle East in Gaza. Let me tell you, and this is a message to Trump, that I don't think any Palestinian or any Gazan actually would oppose such a great visionary idea of having Gaza hosting the resorts of the Middle East, to have a Saint-Tropez of the Middle East in Gaza. And we don't see any contradiction with that visionary plan while having the Palestinian people themselves enjoying that Riviera, since this Riviera will be actually hosted on the lands of the Palestinians. We should not neglect in this pragmatic, visionary, creative scenario that the Palestinian people were displaced, forcibly displaced many times, and this is their land and they continue to be there. And for the past 15 months, with every attempt that the Israeli military occupation forces tried through a genocide to displace the Palestinian people, they did not leave. They remained on the land. So here I am advocating for this visionary Riviera in Gaza, but why not have the Palestinians themselves enjoy this Riviera? On the other hand, of the other angle of the analysis, we come to international law, and we need to do a reading of his statement from an international law perspective. Here, the statements are not merely passing political rhetoric, but it actually reflects the modern colonialist mindset that seeks to impose the new realities on our grounds through force, through blatant violations of international law, as exactly like he did with Jerusalem and the settlements and the Golan Heights with his previous administration. More importantly, I think, sure.
Go ahead, finish your thought, go ahead.
I mean, there is, in his vision, under international law, it constitutes and he's inciting for crimes of forced displacements against the Palestinian people, another crime of land seizure by coercion, and another crime of collective punishment. So all of which are classified under war crimes under the international law.
And look, you said this isn't just rhetoric in your view by Donald Trump. I was going to ask you about that because we have to wonder, look, how serious do we think Donald Trump is about all of this? Was that just kind of show yesterday in that press conference? Because, look, we know Arab countries are pretty clear that they're not going to take in Palestinians. So really, is this just talk?
Listen, many analysts and decision makers around the world would agree that Trump is totally unpredictable, and that's why everybody was surprised. The international reactions, including the Arab world reactions, are very important. Some reactions are saying that his statements are nonsense. Yes, logically speaking, academically speaking, from a political science thought perspective and legal perspective, it is nonsense. However, we should not undermine the fact that also his previous imposed facts on our grounds were also under the framework of nonsense. We're also under the framework of violations of international law. He did recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. He did give authorities for the Golan Heights for the Israeli authorities. He is now advocating for annexations to become de jure, and he is using the terminology of Judea and Samaria instead of West Bank. So I think now we actually need to respond with a very, very serious political tone to what he had announced. Yes, it doesn't make any sense, yet the international reaction, the Palestinian reaction needs to also be solid and needs to come, we need to walk our talk in our unity and in our proposals and in our, brokering what the Palestinian people's resilience deserve in preserving our political rights, our right to self-determination, and preserving the dignity of those refugees and displaced people who had already been suffering for the past 15 months. On the international arena, I would expect every country of the international world system not only to issue statements and firm statements, and with the gratitude to the statements which were already issued, yet now there is need for the international coalition on the two-state solution led by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and France to take action. It is now the prime time to move from rhetoric to action, from statements to concrete imposed facts on our grounds. If we are serious about peace, two-state solution, security and stability in the region, then Trump needs to be reminded that the primary party to this instability in the region is the Palestinian people, and the Palestinian people have embedded rights. It's not a favor that Trump is bringing to the Palestinian people. And yes, why not have the Riviera in Gaza while the Palestinian people enjoy it?
Well, look, your take on that is very interesting, but we're not going to have a two-state solution, peace in Gaza, if the ceasefire doesn't hold. Phase 2 of that deal is supposed to be being discussed around now. That would involve Israeli troops, in theory, leaving Gaza and more Israeli hostages being released. Are we close to that now? Do you think that Trump's statements yesterday interfere with efforts to continue the ceasefire?
Well, the whole scenario of Netanyahu's visit to Washington actually interfered, because the visit in itself was a violation to the basic agreement on ceasefire and hostage exchanges. He did postpone, in violation of the agreement, the second phase of negotiations. So that was a blatant, blunt violation of the agreement. However, if we were talking about peace again, if we're talking about sustainability of this ceasefire agreement, then a political, comprehensive, inclusive framework must be adopted. And here we must talk about, the need to identify the borders of the State of Israel, the need to implement what came in the ICJ ruling back in July 2024, which basically, spelled out the illegality of the Israeli prolonged military occupation and the need to dismantle the settler colonial project within a time frame that was given consent by 149 countries in September 24 in the UN. It is time now for the world to act seriously and to move from rhetoric to action.
And look, just a final question for you. You're in the occupied West Bank. You're in the city of Ramallah. Give us a sense of, how this news is being digested where you are, because we've been looking at images from Jenin, another Palestinian city, over the past couple of days, a major military incursion by Israel ongoing there at the moment. Are people fearful of a wider Israeli campaign in the West Bank, given Donald Trump's clear support for Israel at the moment?
Listen, what we also saw in Trump's actually statements is an alignment between Trump's thinking with the right extreme wing government in Israel. Exactly that. And what we're witnessing in the West Bank, the suffocation, the blockage, the intensified checkpoints, the military operations, under the pretext, again, of, getting rid of resistance. It's again under one framework of a settler colonial project, which might come, as Trump was mentioning, under the validation of annexation of the West Bank. Yes, people are fearful, but people are also resilient, and people are very frustrated and furious against the more imposed illegal facts on our grounds. The Palestinian people are here to tell the whole world that we will not leave. Every attempt that Israel had been trying to use against the Palestinian people, not only for the past 15 months, but also for the past 77 years, in trying to ethnically cleanse the Palestinian people, in trying to forcibly evict the Palestinians, in trying to extrajudicially kill the Palestinians, to also detain the Palestinians. The Palestinian people continue to show resilience, continue to also demonstrate that there are embedded rights for the Palestinian people politically, and we will not accept that this, visionary way of thinking, more creativity, comes only in economic solutions, and that undermine the political rights of the Palestinian people. So if Trump is serious about winning the Nobel Prize, and we as Palestinians will be happy actually if he gets there, but he needs to realize that the most important lesson learned from his previous brokered Abraham Accords, that he needs to include the primary party to this conflict, which is the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people deserve to have a word, and they have the right to decide their future and to enjoy a dignified Palestinian, liberated and sovereign state.
Dalal Iriqat, look, it's been really interesting to talk to you today. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
All of you there from Ramallah with Dalal Iriqat. And let's broaden this out a little bit now and look at how Middle Eastern countries have been reacting to Trump's press conference yesterday. Emerald Maxwell is with me now, and she's been looking into some of the details. Emerald.
Yes, well, predictably, Nadia, Trump's comments have provoked really a backlash in much of the Middle East, not least from the Palestinians, as we heard there, with whom resettlement is understandably a very sensitive issue. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, he called for the United Nations to protect the Palestinian people and their rights, and said that what Trump wanted to do would be a serious violation of international law. Meanwhile, Hamas, which sparked the war with its October 7th attack on Israel, they called the remarks absurd and asked Trump to walk back from them. They also call them irresponsible. They say contradict international law and the basic rights of the Palestinian people. They also added that Trump's call for Gazans to be resettled in nearby countries was a recipe for creating chaos and tension in the region. And of course, this is a common feeling across the region. The exodus of Palestinians during the creation of Israel in 1948 triggered years of instability in neighboring countries like Jordan and Lebanon, which are now home to millions of Palestinian refugees. There's no official census, but by most estimates, more than 50% of Jordanians are in fact Palestinian. Jordan's Ken Abdullah said today that he rejected any attempts to annex land and displace Palestinians, as he has whenever this idea of resettling Gazans has come up, whether it be from Trump or anyone else. Jordan, though, is a close US ally and has been heavily dependent on US aid, which, although Trump has since announced a freeze on US aid since he came to power, could he now make that aid contingent on resettling more Palestinians? We know that he's not averse to applying that kind of pressure. Egypt's foreign ministry, meanwhile, also issued a statement today stressing the need for rebuilding without moving the Palestinians out of the Gaza Strip. Egypt, of course, shares a border with Gaza and Israel. They are in a cold peace with Israel and they cooperate on security issues. But they have repeatedly said that they would not resettle Palestinians on its land. Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, which is considered Trump's closest ally in the Gulf region, they weighed in quickly after Trump's comments, they called their position firm, steadfast, unwavering, and not subject to negotiation on the establishment of a Palestinian state. And they stressed that they will not establish ties with Israel without that. And that, of course, comes in the context of years of the United States diplomacy led by the United States between Israel and Saudi Arabia, its two most important Middle East allies, to try and normalize ties between them. But the Gaza war put a big spanner in the works, and Saudi Arabia shelved that plan for now. Meanwhile, the Gulf states of the UAE and Bahrain, which of course signed historic normalization ties with Israel before the Gaza war, they have yet to react to Trump's comments. And there's also been little reaction from Qatar, which has been the key mediator between Israel and Hamas since the war broke out, which perhaps suggests it's sticking to its diplomatic role for now, Nadia.
All right, Emerald Maxwell, thanks very much indeed. So we've been looking there at a reaction from Palestinians, of course, but also reaction from some Arab countries. Now, what about reaction among Israelis today? Here's the perspective of a few in Jerusalem.
I think it is a good idea to transfer the population in Gaza to other places, and this will be good for the residents themselves. They will receive a different education. Today, the education in Gaza is not good. It is against the Jews, against the whole world. And it is good for Israel, as there won't be terror there, and there won't be everything that there is there today, all the rockets and all the tunnels.
As someone who served 8 months in Gaza, I think it's absolutely necessary to agree to Trump's plan to evacuate all the Arabs from there and build, well, something else, to renovate this place. God is great, but what's certain is that to purify this place will be excellent.
Well, that's the view then of some citizens of Israel. How have Israeli politicians been reacting then to Trump's comments? Well, his words are being seen as a boon for the extreme right in Israel, as our Jerusalem correspondent Noga Tanopolsky now explains.
They're playing into a number of things here. They're playing into the hands of Israel's extreme Jewish supremacist, overtly racist far right, such as former Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, who was Prime Minister Netanyahu's Minister for National Security until he left the government to oppose the ceasefire, who already joined the congratulations of the other extremists this morning, saying yes, and this is the moment for us to declare sovereignty over the West Bank as well, as if everyone can just hand out pieces of Palestinian territory right now. In Israel, there's been a strange kind of, I would say, giggling, giddy response, even among those on the far right or veering towards mainstream, who seem happy at the notion of just Gazans being gone. There is an acknowledgement at the same time that this is not a possible reality. We are hearing that from experienced diplomats such as Amira Oron, the former ambassador to Egypt, and others. But there is this strange giddiness among the extreme right wing. Of course, we should remember that at this very same time, Donald Trump and his team have made it completely clear, unmistakably clear that the United States expects all of the terms of this ceasefire to be maintained and to be continued, which would mean the end of the war between Israel and Hamas. It would mean the full withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza. So the Israelis on the right wing and the rest of the Israeli government, they're going to have to swallow these red lines, what were for them until very recently flat out red lines, if they want to proceed towards what I have to say does sound and feel a bit like a Trumpian provocation or policy. There's, of course, no method, no system in place to evacuate almost 2 million Gazans, and there's no one willing to take them. It also does not seem that they themselves want to leave. So we find ourselves in a real brouhaha created by what appears to be Donald Trump's dreams of seeing Gaza turned into a resort, possibly through investments by his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who is known to have advanced this notion of Gaza as a real estate opportunity, at least for the last few years.
Noga Tanopolsky reporting for us there. Well, let's take a look then at the situation on the ground at the moment in Gaza after 15 months of intensive Israeli bombardment. The World Health Organization says more than 12,000 critically injured people now need to be evacuated for treatment. Hospitals in Egypt and in Jordan are ready to admit patients, but nobody can leave Gaza without permission from Israel. The process is slow and opaque, and injured people effectively are trapped. Siobhan Silk has this report.
A life-saving flight for Habiba al-Askari. The 2-year-old who lives with her family in Gaza is affected by a rare genetic condition that has cut off circulation to her limbs, severely damaging them. She couldn't get proper care for the normally treatable condition in Gaza, where 15 months of Israeli bombardments have devastated the health system, with fewer than half of the 36 hospitals partially functioning. For months, Habiba's mother was desperate to get her out of Gaza, but all evacuations have to be approved by Israel. The toddler got permission last month, but it was cancelled twice at the last minute.
It's agonising for us. It's not how we feel, but it's agonising to watch the disappointment and the worry of a mother.
The NGO Médecins Sans Frontières says Israel's criteria for medical evacuation are not clear, and permission can depend on who is accompanying the patient.
We understood little by little that it's more easy with a female caretaker, it's easier with elderly and so on, but even this has been always quite difficult to understand. Unfortunately, we have seen a couple of cases like this that unfortunately there is a first yes and then at the end the person cannot exit the country.
Media reports about Habiba's situation helped launch a huge effort to get her out, with high-level officials in Jordan working behind the scenes. Finally, the green light came. On Monday, the Jordanian Air Force provided a medevac flight, and Habiba is now getting the treatment she needs in Jordan. But most patients have no access to high-level advocates. And according to the World Health Organization, 12,000 critically ill children and adults need to leave Gaza for medical care.